So, I hope this important dialogue between potential housing partners is just the beginning of developing a more stable, permanent, service-supported housing model in Williston that's affordable for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities that are served by their current home and community-based service waiver. Data for the last 10 years show that the demand for this is increasing, and we know that those coming through the school system in the next 5 years, the numbers continue to grow. And so the demand for this affordable housing it's just going to continue to expand. Right now, we as a parent group are mostly concerned because we feel that there's really only one option for our children, which doesn't necessarily work for our children. So many of our children are living in our homes, and we are not getting any younger, I guess is what I would say. We know that we're just a small subset of the demand for affordable housing here in Williston, and are certainly cognizant of that. But I think our focus today is more on for our group. But if you want to enlarge that, I guess it's open for discussion. But I know for those that are here from the Howard Center, they're going to be would be the ones that would be serving, for example, as one option, our children in service supported housing. Our hope is that we can potentially replicate this across the state as part of DDHI. It's something that can be developed here, and it would be a model that can be replicated across the state for other communities. And know that our goal is to continue to deal with things because we don't want to see our children. There's always a chance for homelessness when we pass on, as well as there is the affordable whole housing crisis today that we're trying to deal with. So let's quickly just go through the agenda, if you don't mind putting it up.
I think one other we're talking children, but these are young adults. These are like people over 20 to 25.
Yeah, sorry, I was only a kid. I gotta change that.
Always babies in your eyes, right?
But you know, I know they're like 40 minutes. I just know them as kids. Do you know what I mean? I guess come on. So thanks for that correction. So let's do a quick review of the agenda, and then we'll do a quick just introductions, just say your name and what role or organization you're representing today. And I know we have an hour time slot. I don't know if people have a hard stop or not, but we'll go ahead and get started then. So I've already introduced myself, so we'll pass it off to Marla, and we'll just go around the circle here in person, and then we'll jump to those that are on Zoom.
I'm Marla McQuiston. I'm also with the Coalition Committee with the Developmental Disabilities Housing.
I'm Emily Heyman, Senior Planner for the Town of Williston. I'm named to help staff the Development Review Board when new developments are proposed.
I'm Melinda Scott. I'm the new community energy and community development planner, and I'll be working on affordable housing, promoting and figuring out ways to support affordable housing.
Chris Sunasek, developer, along with my brother, we're the ones that are bringing Summerfield to fruition. You know, we felt for a long time. We've done 2 other projects in Williston, probably done 160 units total in Williston, Chelsea Commons, and then Chatham Woods. Chatham Woods obviously was something very different. This project that we're bringing to the market is something very different than what we've ever done before. We spent a lot of time looking at needs and from the perspective of the Williston town plan. Williston's plan is their process is very different than any other town that you go to, and in some respects, you know, we had Ken Belvo, who was the previous director, help us bring it through. You know, we received a lot of help from staff in terms of planning things out and talking about things long before we actually, you know, did them. And I think that proved to be something that was very beneficial, and you know, I commend them for that. A lot of times you don't get the opportunity to get the feedback that you need. I think at times, you know, a lot of things that we want to address in the plans, pro or con, need to be done, you know, prior to getting to the meeting, before, so you don't, you know, open yourself up to all kinds of criticism. So I think, you know, this is the culmination of about 3 years of work. The affordable component, obviously, it's something that Williston, and all towns really want. I think from my perspective as a dad, I've got 3 children. One's 31, one's 29, the other one's 25. The 25-year-old's up in Utah, so he could care less about affordable housing. But from my perspective, I'm going through this with my daughter right now, and short of living in Pownell, and trying to find a place, it's been a real eye opener. And then when you combine the market that we're in, where you have, no, we're not gonna allow you to do an inspection. No, you're not gonna do any financing. You're just gonna buy it and shut up. That doesn't work for a lot of people that are just starting out and don't have a lot of money. And then when you look at what they're actually buying, MLS has kind of come to the bottom of the pit as far as I'm concerned in terms of what's out there. I mean, some of the stuff that you see, I wouldn't put my dog on, so that's the kind of stuff that I think prompted myself anyways to want to pursue this more so than other people have. And I think that it's kind of my way of giving back to those people out there, whether they appreciate it or not. I know what's out there, I know what's not. And I know that, this concept with the units a little tighter together, having community center, afforded to them, I think is, especially in this location too, is very convenient to a lot of things. It doesn't get much more convenient than that. I think it's got a lot of pluses for it. And so the affordable component, aside from garnering points during the permit process, it kind of sets the pace for where, we want to go with things. Yes, we're going to have market rate units in our project, but we feel that the two can coexist. A lot of times people don't like that, and unfortunately, you get a lot of people in our previous projects that, don't want to be next to affordable. I mean, I've had people come to me at Shaw's, which I forgot that I was on a Zoom meeting and people saw my face. And so next thing you know, people are coming up to me saying, we don't want your development to look like the north end of Burlington. And I said, what are you talking about? People I don't even know. And so it kind of hit me hard as to, what's wrong with these people? I mean, everybody starts somewhere. And this business, I remember when we first started developing, we were selling houses in Shelburne, 1,400 square foot houses for $60,000. I wish I could have those. Can I have those back? And yeah, and so when people have no idea as to how things have exponentially grown and cost so much more that it does shove a lot of people completely out of the market. And we won't even get into the rental end of it because that's just gone crazy, so.
Great, well, I'm glad you came for us and for the discussion. Yeah, go ahead and then
Yeah, no, very interesting for us to see your perspective about what motivated you to get into this. Kathy Barwin, part of the DDHI coalition.
Tanya Mason, Developmental Services Director at Howardson. I'm excited to be here today. Hi, I'm Kathy Biscaglia, and I am the Director of Innovation and Special Projects at Howard Center. And I'm really excited about this potential special project. So, Chris, thanks for your openness to having this discussion. I'm really excited about the possibilities.
Yeah,
I'll pass it off to either Shannon and Katie if you want to introduce yourself.
Shannon Heltner, just an interested party and parents.
Consults with them.
I'm Katie Tormey. I am a member of the DDHI. I'm a mother of a 33-year-old daughter with Down syndrome and very interested in future residence for her. Thanks.
All right, so we're gonna do that on the word. I don't know if I said this, but we're gonna turn it off first to the Williston zoning and planning and Linda and Emily. I don't know you both speaking or what, but talk a little bit about some of the current housing planning work that's going on. And then Chris will let you speak more about your developments and then move it over to Howard Center to say how they work with organizations in the past, developers in the past. I mean, just kind of set the baseline so we kind of know where we're at and open up a good discussion.
Sure. So I guess I'll start and then you can add, whatever you think. So Williston, several years ago, kind of realized that they weren't getting affordable housing to agree that it's needed. And there weren't very many, historically, there weren't very many, incentives for affordable housing, in bylaws. A committee was set up in 2014, a task force to look at how Williston could better support affordable housing. And they produced a report that has several recommendations, some of them related to potential bylaw revisions, which have since been incorporated. And other recommendations had to do more with like funding mechanisms and just how institutionally the town could better support affordable housing. So as a result, the town did set up an affordable housing trust fund in 2017. And the town has yet to establish a housing committee, but with the addition of my position, that provides more staff capacity to direct and staff that committee. So we're anticipating that in next like winter or spring that we are going to establish a permanent housing committee. And we would like participation from anyone either on the committee or anyone who is interested in creating housing for people with disabilities to be on the committee. And we'll be doing more outreach related to that in the coming months. But right now we're in the process of developing a charge for the committee, and then that will go to the select board, and then we will really start recruiting for members. So that's about all I have to say about what we're doing in planning. And we are going to be working with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission on developing a housing needs assessment over the coming year. And that will inform future possible bylaw amendments related to affordable housing, supporting more affordable housing.
Yeah, I'll add in terms of development review and permitting. I think that's probably the last step and probably the easiest step. And the more challenging things are going to be figuring out ownership mechanisms, financing, how you actually get from an idea to turnkey home. And in terms of a project like Chris's or any other development in Williston, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this type of housing to plug in and be an inconsequential permit in terms of getting it through the development review board and approved. And we'll be here like throughout the process to help with what local permits would be required. Williston recently amended the impact fee, recreation and school impact fees, where if something is going to be managed by an agency, it could receive a waiver from the select board and the school and recreation impact fees, which is several $1,000s in savings, especially when you're looking at multiple units. And so that's all I have to say.
Is that a yearly fee?
It's a one-time fee. So when money is pulled for a new house, there's a one-time school, recreation, and transportation impact fees. The impact fee for transportation is automatically reduced for affordability level. The school and recreation are not. And those can now be granted by a select board waiver if they're managed by an organization.
Is it managed or owned? You know?
I can look that up. It's a particular.
We don't have to.
is a community land trust, housing trust, or other nonprofit that provides or will provide affordable housing. And provides evidence and written guarantee that will be effectually affordable at or below 80% the area median. So it has to be.
So it says the developer is a community land trust. So, I mean, that infers ownership, but I think,
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to get in the weeds on
Yeah.
that now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
See. None of this would be, this project wouldn't be have come online were it not for the work that Ken Belvo did 3-4 years ago in changing some of the growth management stipulations that were in place. I think that Williston recognized, I'll date myself, but Chatham, we started in 2003. Growth management was a very different animal than it is now. I think that there was some concern about the restricted nature of growth management and what it was, what's it trying to achieve? Ultimately, are we trying to get more, units in here? What are we getting? And are we getting the wrong type of units? Are we getting just the big block buildings? Are we getting, just stuff that, the McMansions, and what are we doing? So those changes that came about and were approved by the select board opened the door in our minds, because we were watching, and I came to all the meetings with Ken to see what changes were going to be made, because without those, when you're talking a development of this size, you can't, in other towns, you could, if you wanted to come in and build 138 units, 139 units, you could. Here, we understood the stipulations, we understood how the process worked. However, getting 10 or 15 units is not enough to substantiate, millions of dollars worth of infrastructure work. And that's why you see pretty much nothing but nonprofits doing this type of work because of the cost of it, and it needs funding. So with that in mind, that changed, and that made a huge difference. I mean, our first growth management allocation, we got 60 units, which was not quite half, but it was a hell of a good start. Because in previous years, I think we were looking at maybe whatever was available, and in looking at how the sheets ran out into the future, you start to see less and less and less. So it became a problem from that perspective of trying to say with any certainty, am I going to get enough units to, satisfy the need, or am I just going to be, paddling with no oars, So that changed, and that made a huge difference, and that's why this project is where it's at. I think that we feel that the combination of minimizing, the space between the buildings and keeping everything tight, offering a variety of housing stock, which is something that is very different than Chatham. Chatham, we just had the duplex units. We had 3 different designs. Here we have units that we'll start with this rendition, and I'll just pass this around. This is the 1-bedroom frontal facade. What we wanted to do with this development was to make sure, unlike other developments that we've looked at, that when you drove into this development, if it's were to be all finished as we speak, that you couldn't pick out who's affordable and who's not. A lot of big developments, you see that. I don't personally care for it. I think it diminishes. And I think that with good planning, I think you can get to a point where you can't tell when you drive in. I mean, these units, they're going to be 1-bedroom, bath and a half, full basement, 1-car garage. But you're not going to be able to tell anybody, oh yeah, that's where all the poor people live, or that's where the affordable stuff happens. And so that was one of the big goals for this development. That's why we spread things out the way we did. And I think that that's going to make a difference in terms of its overall desirability, and also the ability of people to come in and not feel affected by whether they can afford stuff or they can't afford. That really shouldn't be an issue, but in our day and age, it is. And so that's the way it works. So, we've looked at, we're going to try and keep the association simple, so that, one of the things for us is, after learning, and you go through these projects, with the association and the bylaws, and you realize there's some things that you shouldn't do and some things you should do. So we're gonna try and keep this one very simple. And I think that that's going to also help with the ownership. These are what are considered airspace lots underneath these buildings, so with the exception of the 6 lots that we have that are part of this development. We've already gone through and talked with the title people, in terms of financing in the secondary market, so we're all set there. So you're gonna have limited common elements, just like you do at Chatham, where you have exclusive use areas. So in the front and then the rear, they're for your exclusive use only. Association is going to maintain, the snow plowing, garbage removal, and then lawn care, and then the plantings. But the rest of it is going to be borne by the homeowner, so they're not going to have, because one of the things that I think we're very keen on with this project is we're gonna have a wide disparity of incomes. We're gonna have people that could buy, this building 10 times over, and then we'll have people that, barely can get in here. So we don't want people of greater means telling other people, yeah, we're gonna spend your money the way, we want to spend it because we feel that's the right way to do it. So that's one change from Chatham and from Chelsea that, we've improvised. We don't like people being in other people's business. I think that's something that's happened over time. And I think that's something that we want to try and avoid here. So this project, I think, embodies a lot of the good things that the staff has gone through and improvised in the bylaws. And I think that, it's, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think it's kind of the forward thinking project. I think other people are going to have at times they're going to be compared to this and say, hey, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? So, but we wanted everybody to have the ability to come here and have a place. There's nothing saying that, we all have to have $600,000 or $800,000 houses. So that was the driving force, basically, for a lot of the things that you see in this project and what we're offering. So that's about it.
So, Howard Center, we're not a housing provider, but we support a lot of people who need a place to live. And like Jen said earlier, back in 1993, Vermont closed its only institution for people with intellectual and developmental disability. And the state, made a commitment to people at that time that they were going to live fully integrated lives in the community. And at the time, the established housing model for the people coming out of Brandon and other people in the system who needed housing was the shared living provider model. So you'll hear people say the SLP model or the home provider model. And, what that looks like is it's kind of like an adult foster care model. People have called it that. It's, agencies contract with individuals or families or whatever makeup of someone to bring a client into their home and have them live there. And that was really the primary option for individuals with disabilities who didn't want to live at home or couldn't live at home. And over time, for a while, it was really great. Like it was certainly better than living in an institution, and it met a lot of people's needs. And, over time, things changed for people with disabilities, and people with disabilities are now fully integrated into schools and their families and their communities. And then, when they age out of school, when they're no longer in school, things really kind of fall off for them in terms of options. They'll see their peers or their brothers and sisters going off to college or getting an apartment. And, a young adult with disabilities has very limited options if they don't want to live at home with their parents or parent any longer. And, so for years as an agency, Howard Center has, seen that and heard that and had tried to respond in various ways within sort of the, regulations of the system that governs us. And so we've been able to do little things here and there, and establish relationships with housing authorities and landlords, to do some creative things. And we, now, this group of parents has really like gained some traction within the state, where the state has recognized, wow, we really need to like allow for more housing options. And so we're at a really nice place where I think we may be able to move the needle on this. But for the group's knowledge, some of the things that we as an organization have been able to do through our partnership with housing authorities, and we do some work with both Champlain Housing Trust and Burlington Housing Authority. We do a lot of work and have a very strong partnership with Burlington Housing Authority, where we have established, formal agreements, memorandums of understanding with them for access to Section 8 vouchers for individuals who would be supported in a particular living situation, whether that's, an affordable apartment that they are renting using their Section 8 voucher with Howard Center services in place to help with housing retention, or whether that is, Burlington Housing Authority at one point built a building for us to run a program in, and that was born out of, they had a property, and it's really a relationship, right? Like they were like, hey, Kathy, we have this land. Is there a need for a particular building? What is the need? We can work with you. And so, in that situation, they built a building to our sort of specification, and they own the building, and we provide the residents we do all the, programming for the residents, screening for who's going to live there. They, the individuals who live there qualify for a Section 8 voucher, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a transitional situation where people live there for a period of time and gain independent living skills and then move out into the community. So we have a situation like that. We also have the option to, sort of master lease a building that we can then have clients living in supported ways. We are currently engaged in with a developer to build a building for us for one of our homes that we run for individuals with mental health challenges, that we then are purchasing that building. So there's a number of different ways to engage with developers or builders. And, if we had potential residents for Summerfield, we could look at, if our residents aren't able to purchase a house, is there an option for a collaboration where somebody else owns a house, whether it's the agency or whether it's you or your, and we partner with you to provide services within that home for the individuals who live there. So there's a number of different ways to do it. Some individuals can afford maybe to buy a place, others can't. So it's nice to just not have one, like we got into with the shared living model. It's nice to have different options. Some people do better living with other people. Some people might want to be living alone. Some people need like a live-in caregiver. So there's a number of different ways to go about it.
Great. Let's go ahead and just get into any questions that we might have to get around it. Chris, one question I had is, when you that the 6 o'clock, is that right?
Yeah,
No, the 1 bedrooms.
there's three, so I'd say the first one is Williston, and that is, these are all gonna be strictly 1 bedroom, bath and a half, 1 car garage, full basement. The affordable units that we're gonna be offering are going to, at this point, looks like some are gonna be ones, some are gonna be twos, and some will be threes. So, this particular building is a triplex, and this is going to be either 2 with a family room, 2 bedrooms with a family room, or 3 bedrooms with a family room, up to about 2,100 square feet. So that's another option that we will see affordable going into. This is one of our standard fourplexes, and here again, these are either gonna be 2 or 3 bedroom. They all have full basements, they all have 1 car garages. So listening to what you've been mentioning, any one of these could fit a need at some point, with your clients.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's, because I know in some of the models that we look at, again, we are representing the coalition community, so we're not a group set of parents yet, but I know there's a lot of interest to take it to the next level. Maybe considering there are going to be those individuals that are either semi-independent or fairly independent, you just need to check in these, or maybe they can look at one. Then we have others with much higher needs, and I would say many of the parents in our group they're not all 24/7 care, but need some level of 24/7 care, whether checking in or whatnot. So that's kind of exciting, and I think the Howard Center, has shared with us before that even if we go into a neighborhood and find one center, and say, I don't know how you're gonna find new buildings that are for sale in the neighborhoods, that they could provide services to multiple people in a small area. That's much more affordable for them to provide services. So, this development, we have a lot of options here, which would be great.
Well, certainly starting out new, the possibility that I'm not gonna say they're endless, but they're not far from it. I think that there's a lot of things you can do. And that's why spreading these buildings out in the development, gives a different perspective for it. And at the same time, it doesn't, kind of put a namesake on you, you're just, nobody's gonna know
Right,
whether
yeah, we're
this.
not putting a Howard Center sign.
Exactly. You're never gonna know whether somebody's, is just a normal person or somebody that, has special needs, whatever the case may be. That's it. So whether it's money or it's capacity, it doesn't, to us, it doesn't matter. What matters is, being able to, make everything look contiguous so that, for other people and for them. And if that were to happen, that it would work.
So Chris, when you think about this development, there's gonna be an HOA for this, and so when you do these, do you keep sort of ownership of the HOA under your purview? Are you the guy who coordinates all those services for snow and mud?
Chances are, in the very beginning, we oversee it ourselves. There will be an HOA. We typically, my brother and myself will be on the board along with somebody else. Initially, this particular project is going to have 3 board members, up until, I think 66% when we have to skedaddle off the board. And then it'll be a 5 board member. Because we feel that more heads gives you better results instead of, people that like control and power, as we all know. So that's something that's going to be a little bit different here. But certainly, I think the HOA is going to, I think we try to look at this as more of, for our purposes, as the minimalist services. We just came out of, Chatham, and, I've had a number of concerns about the way things are done or run there. I mean, I created it, it was my idea. And so I think the idea here is to keep people out of other people's business. And I know that might sound strange to some of you, but if you've been in it, you know what I'm talking about, and for us, there's certain services that are mandatory and are necessary, it's snow removal, lawn care, rubbish and cycles. After that, I think people, it's just no different than nobody checks each person and goes, did you pay your taxes this, on the 15th? and nobody does that. So
Right.
we all have to be responsible for certain things in our
Right.
lives.
So, when you think about these buildings, is there a possibility where you would ever consider like being a landlord for some of these units where you have, you know, a partnership with Howard Center, say, to make sure supports were in place and people who were living in that house were getting what they needed, and they had access to like a Section 8 voucher to make it affordable that way. Would you ever consider something like that?
I think, I will never say no to anything, you know, in terms of the day-to-day, overseeing of it, no, I wouldn't want to do that. At the same time, I think in terms, and I've talked just a little bit to Jen about it, the time to, if you have people that you deal with that have special needs, whether, you know, we were talking about, because these are all public buildings, with the exception of the duplexes and the carriage home. The duplex up is considered a public building by the state of Vermont. So, you know, we were looking at whether or not you could, like in the east, you know, the one bedroom units, whether we could connect them. So that if you had somebody, and I don't know this, your situation or anybody's situation at this point, but if you had somebody that was a, you know, facilitator and they wanted to live next to that person, whether we could have literally an opening to get into that room, and if the buzzer went off and something happened and they fell or whatever the case may be, that you could, you know, you could facilitate that. So these are all questions that we've asked public safety, here in Williston, and so far everything's been pretty positive in terms of their feedback. So at that time, it would be so I guess what we're trying to do is see how much ground we have to, because typically the party walls between units cannot be mitigated in any way, shape, or form. So that was a question that we had, because when Jen had mentioned it, you know, I'm thinking, well, if I was overseeing somebody or caring for somebody, I want to be able to get to them quick. So, you know, in that respect, so if you didn't want to live with them, you could be right next door to them. And if you couldn't, you had to live with them, and then you had 2 bedrooms, because these, like the units with 2 bedrooms, they're all big bedrooms. I mean, these are 13 by 15 on average. They're more than big enough. I mean, I think about when I lived with my brother, and we had little bedrooms. Yeah. So the kids are spoiled these days. So there's a lot of possibilities as far as being able to put people in these units comfortably, and then still have, you know, good living space, and at the same time oversee whatever needs they have. So the answer is that, you know, we certainly would consider it as we're going through. You know, we're just getting this thing off the ground.
Right.
You know, we're still going through our permit process as we speak, and so I think there's a lot of possibilities, and one of the things would be affordable that I felt down the road would be maybe somebody like yourselves would come in and say, hey, you guys, we want you to, you know, we have all these people that have all these needs, and you know, can you build us this, and you know, have them there. And of course, the answer is, of course, they can be there. The rest of it, you know, their needs and everything else that goes along with it is cool.
Right. And that's, you know, we have found, you know, like this model where, you know, Burlington Housing Authority like built this building and they own the building. And we have an agreement that, we have sort of a lease agreement with them. We don't pay the rent on the building, but the clients who live there pay the rent using vouchers. And we're responsible for, you know, making sure the building is maintained, that, you know, except for if the furnace blows up, then they have to fix it. But, you know, like the day-to-day kinds of things we're responsible for. And so I just don't think that has been a very workable arrangement for people who can't just straight up afford to buy something of their own that qualify for affordable housing. So it's just it's a nice way to support people in a place that they're then paying their own.
Well, some of the things too, like people can't necessarily afford to buy it, but they also If they're receiving social security, they can't have more than a certain amount of resources. So then if they own something.
Right.
It goes to trust.
Right.
And managed by the trustee.
Yeah.
It's not as straightforward.
Right.
Becomes a lot more.
So I don't know, Tanya, if you have other.
No, I was just thinking around the site that we have a partnership with DHA, it's a mix of accessible apartment areas, the bathroom included. So bedrooms, so it's like one level, and then there are some, bedrooms upstairs, and one of the challenges that we've had, is really around accessible housing units, and people being able to access them, whether they're in a wheelchair or not, even their gait or walking, and ability to walk, even a couple steps has been, challenging. So I'm just thinking around, new builds or options, just thinking around those, in particular, bathrooms are challenging, really challenging. And if there's like an island, it's like there's a whole thing, around, it being accessible, especially if some regions, so that we're not moving people from like apartment to apartment or house to house. So.
A lot of the people in our group are intensive special needs and maybe even need like someone to help them in the bathroom and 2 people. So then you need a bathroom that can accommodate 3 people moving around with a wheelchair or a walker. So
And there are many that aren't, but there are some. That's that kind of intense, but I think we can. Yeah. So
try to work in some.
So these buildings have to meet, I'm sure you know, the ADA codes for accessibility. I mean, like the half baths all have to be, I think it's 6'6" square, at a minimum. So that someone coming in, all your doors have to be. We do all 3 doors, so it's really never been an issue. I mean, I went to an open house a couple weeks ago and went in this door to a bathroom that was 2-4, and I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Somebody made a mistake, so a lot of the issues that you're talking about, probably would not be issues here. We put in lifts for people, going from the first floor to second that had special needs. The hallways are all, a minimum of 42, if not 48. Our stairs are the same thing. We go with extra wide treads, and then we do a gentler slope on the treads so that, you, instead of being like this, you're laid down well. So, these buildings, that are being proposed here all fall under those guidelines. So
Be affordable or all?
everything that's not a carriage home. So 2 units and greater, everybody, we have to do the same thing for everything. So the way these are designed takes into account those factors. So we're not, yes, there's certainly, if you had somebody that, you needed 3 people to help them get into a shower. I mean, the master shower, obviously you want to take a hard look at that so that you could get them in and out, with ease and not feel compromised.
So in terms of zoning, there's a lot of flexibility here. The way we look at units, where we're blind to who owns things, what the relationship of is people who live inside a unit. Zoning, we really cannot look at those types of factors. In terms of the permitting review for this project, there's not much in design review that's locking in any of those building designs, or just more importantly, the interior floor plan designs. So the zoning wouldn't be an absolute no if something needed to change. And I'll note that statute allows a residential care or group home, Howard Center probably knows this, of up to 8 people. So if it looks like a single family house, but the floor plan might be a little bit different to accommodate that, that's going to be a non-issue for zoning. The permit process, if some units were to move around or some footprints would move around, might vary, but at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of flexibility in this approval to support this.
I guess I was curious as to whether like CHT, whether you like ever work with them or Cathedral Square on like, say, them coming in and buying, a few units and and then working with you to support people with disabilities.
We do, actually, we have, a building that Cathedral Square owns that we run a program in downtown. That's been very successful, and that's individual apartments within a building, with a on-site, staff person who, provides support to people who are fairly independent. That's a mental health program, so that's why we can have like apartments with people with. There's some differences between developmental services and mental health services in the state, and their, the way they look at congregate housing. So we're moving the needle on that a little bit, but.
I just need to-
So yes, to that, and with Cathedral Square, and then with Champlain Housing Trust, we do, actually lease several properties from them, that they own, that we run programs in, so.
Because maybe that's a possible model for a situation like this. is that they
Right.
buy fewer units.
Right. That would be sort of an alternative to what I suggested about you being the landlord.
Ultimately, I think the concern for us with anything, we're certainly open to conversations. Doesn't matter to us who buys it, as long as, the need is being met, I think. Continuity in a development is very important. I think we've all seen developments where, somebody got this wild idea, and next thing you know, we're off to the races and it kind of throws things off. So we're big about, having a focus for the development and, trying to maintain that focus throughout the development. And hence the reason why, South Village, we built a number of units up there off of, Dorset Spear Street. And, Ireland waited to the very end to start doing they hadn't done that. I think it's affordable. And I mean, I know Scott, I've known him for years, and I just said, how did that happen? Because honestly, if it was my development, I would have wanted to make sure that I had encompassed that right off the bat, so that because now nobody wants to have those people next to them, which is, it's all of us. But the bottom line is that there's a stigma attached to it. And then now, he's fighting to try and get, some here, some here, some here. And that's why with what we did here, we watched what was happening. We said, no, we don't want to see that happen. So the mixing of the units in this development, I think is very special. I haven't seen it anyplace else. And I think it's going to help. No matter if you're a totally normal person, you need all kinds of help. It doesn't matter. You're going to have a home, you're going to have a place to stay, and you're going to be good. So that's kind of the way we see it.
There is a lot of funding for affordable housing for people with disabilities.
There is. So, yeah, so, one of the things that I would mention to you, given that it's come up at this juncture with our in terms of our permitting, is a lot of people have no clue as to, and they wouldn't, because they don't do the permitting part. But we're into Act 250, where
Act 250 is a different animal than local zoning.
Oh, yeah. That's an animal you want to have a pen. But for example, prime ag fees, and I'm going to give you a little education about this. Last week we got our number from Ken, and I'm like, 200 for our development. That's currently the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be. We're talking about $265,000. They're hitting us up for. And in my mind, and I'm
That's
thinking,
your Act 250 fee?
that's an Act 250 fee for prime ag. Now, my grandfather had a farm in Colchester, had 200 head, probably never made a dime in his life, ended up, just dying, getting old. And, I have this aversion to, because I ask, where does the money go? Where does the money go for this? And part of it goes towards implementation for affordable housing. So Chris is thinking, geez, can I get credit for the 42 that I'm offering here as part of my permit? You know, how's the state gonna deal with that? They're gonna go, oh, Mr. Senasak, you're nothing, sir, go get out of here. Or what are they gonna say? And so I think you folks in your various capacities can understand and spread the word about, it's not just one particular thing. It's a cumulative effect. I mean, that project with all the fees that we've got to pay for Act 250, it's just under $500,000. That's just to get the permit. Okay, so needless to say, you know, there's a lot of money up front that you're throwing out there, and you know what happens with it after that. So our process right now is to look at that, and we hired Ken to do his magic and see if, you know, if there's possibility. Because I hear all this talk about affordable housing, but do I see anybody else aside from, and I don't know, I think our project is one of the few. I don't think anybody else has got this number of units. Do they?
No, and certainly not in this mix. I mean, this project is like something completely unprecedented in this. Never have there been one-bedroom units proposed in this part of town. So it is truly exceptional in terms of the variety of housing that's being provided, amenities that are being provided.
The other affordable housing.
Correct, yeah, and that to the point made earlier about where things lead from housing to like a commercial managed service. So the senior living that was recently built in Blair Park, that was considered commercial use. So it didn't have to go through the same rigors of Williston zoning for the growth management allocation, the residential density in terms of units per acre. But that type of commercial use is not allowed here in the residential zoning district. It's pretty much residential and then it's schools, daycare, kitchens, completely exempt. Yeah.
So those are things that I think, you know, when you're thinking about affordable, and that's the sad part is that I think a lot of people in each of these different state, you know, departments, they don't care whether this is a problem or not. They just are doing their job, which is all well fine and good, but it does not solve the problem. I've been in this business since 1980, and I can tell you, I am sick to death of hearing about affordable housing. I said, we're going to show them how to do this with this project, whether or not people appreciate it or not, is yet to be determined. But I think the reality is that I don't see a lot of people bucking up and saying, hey, listen, let's, you know, at least for the affordable, not for the market rate, but give, you know, some concession for that. Okay. Because if you're just telling me you're taking $265,000 and going out and buying more farmland, I'm saying, I'm going to tell you, you're wasting your money. All right, because farmers don't make any money. Right. So that's where I come from on this. And so the more people know about this, I think the more that, you know, because that amounts to about, you know, $3,000 a unit. You know, just from that perspective. So, you know, if you're trying to bring units in that are truly affordable to people, this isn't helping. You know, I mean, the town has made strides to mitigate some of their fees, and that's great. You know, I think there's still more work to be done on the state level for sure. And that's obviously beyond our pay grade, but and you know, I think it needs to be vocalized because I hear a lot of people tooting their horns about it. But whether they're, you know, it's one thing to talk about it, but you walk the walk or you just talk about it.
Yeah, so Chris, you can pay your ag soil fee and then apply for a grant from the Vermont Housing and Conservation.
Excellent. Sign me up. There you go.
Yeah, that's thought. So the way affordable housing is incentivized is based on that area median income. So the max purchase price for a one-bedroom home at 80% area median income is $220,000. A two-bedroom is $266,000, and that's, you know, unattainable for most, because when we're talking about 80%, that means everybody at and above it can afford it, and everybody below it cannot. So I think even the way the affordability is currently set up in Williston, and I know we're being recorded, but I don't think we're actually incentivizing affordable housing at the level that
Because most of our people would be
Yeah, the 30% would be a 1-bedroom, 81,000, 2-bedroom, 98,500.
Yeah.
So it's.
So there is, like, have you guys looked at all of the Vermont community development?
There, yeah, I think we have some work to do before we can actually, like,
Blueprints.
yeah, we, and I talked to somebody at the, Agency of Commerce and Community Development about those. And she basically just said, you know, the first thing you need to do is do a housing needs assessment, and that will inform you of what the needs are, and then, you know, possibly go on to apply for a plan of a program. And then, you know, that will sort of set the stage and for, but I mean,
Talk with, Josh and Bert,
yes,
last week,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, this is something that's there.
yeah,
There's
Yeah.
some steps to it, but
yeah,
the town legally has.
Right. I mean, that's
Maybe
what,
something that, you know, we've got coming together.
yeah, we're definitely interested in looking at that and working.
Yeah.
We would like to do that, at some point, yes.
The other thing that we've had is, we attended a charrette on affordable housing in February, and we had, the guy from, Passive. But he has offered to consult in projects that we put forward he actually did a project for Cathedral Square, and the building was comparable to another building they had, and it was 2% over. The cost was 2% higher for the entire thing, but then they've been saving 40%. So, yeah.
We also heard about, the second, HUD has a section 11, or HUD has a 8 and 11 here, which is, a great for those with disabilities. Okay.
I mean, those are like the Section 8 vouchers that come from the disabilities.
It's something a little bit different.
I don't know.
I thought we
Maybe
did
we're
it in
attaching it to a
voucher grant.
Actually,
Chris, what is your timeline on this project in terms of breaking ground or?
Oh, 2 weeks. No. Well, number one, we're still in the, we got a lot of sleep last night. We're still in the, you know, obviously getting our final, and we can go to that, we're wrapping up all the issues that we had, with preliminary, and we're going to be submitting everything to the town, and you can speak better to this than I can, but I'm assuming that, you know, we'll get some type of memorandum that says you're complete, and then we're gonna have a appeal period start for that. And then, so from that point, once that appeal period is done, then, you know, we're gonna start looking at Act 250. Act 250 is probably about 4 months on average, depending on their workload. So, you know, we're probably talking, you know, late spring, early summer start for the project, depending on the market, depending on interest rates and all that other good stuff. I mean, we've seen some pretty substantial jumps in the market. You know, the demand is still extremely strong, and by virtue of what you see around you, and I think that I don't think that's going to change, but you know, for us, with this project, we kind of wanted to make it like the Ace Hardware of developments. You know, I can go in and buy a set of keys, or I can buy a lawnmower. You know, and so the idea was to give everybody something that they could say, hey, you know, if I want to live in Williston, this is what I'd like to do.
And do these get built as people purchase them, or do they get built and then?
So in this particular development, you know, it's going to be a combination of the two. I mean, we'll be putting units up. I mean, I think that the outside units We don't have any, we have strictly market rate in our first phase because it's very heavily loaded, with development costs to get in there. Once we get through that in phase two, we're gonna have Collins Way is going to be, a lot of the affordable. The affordable aren't gonna be just, we're offering them in 1-bedroom versions, we're gonna be offering them in 2, and we're gonna be offering them in 3. So, because I remember when Matt and Emily first mentioned about the 1-bedroom, we're like, okay, and a 1-bedroom unit is kind of problematic just from a design standpoint. My brother spent a lot of time, that's his rendition of it, and it came out, I think, really well. It functioning, it worked really well. I think I think from the perspective of people coming in, not everybody needs a 1-bedroom. I mean, there's a certain part of it, but there's a lot of people that could use 2, and 3 maybe is too much, but could be a study, could be whatever. So we wanted to give ourselves as much latitude as possible with our design, so that works.
We did move to Josh from the beginning last week, that a lot of, refugee families are looking for.
We've sold to a lot of Vietnamese people that I love how they bless the house they walk in. It's hysterical. Grandma and grandpa coming with, and
Great.
we're all here.
We all learned. So, like we're already at 1:30, I guess we should go on to this. Nothing really about hard stuff. Just wondering about next steps. Thoughts? Wonder if maybe we can do again in a few months, or trying to see where things are at, and even more. See where things are at, have more discussions, and come back and see, keep conversation going, and see where we can. Yeah, I guess.
Well, I think it's an opportunity if there are people out there that want to step forward and, lay a stake. I mean, we've done our part, I think, for the most part. I think, we tried to give this development as much flexibility as we could because, down the road, you honestly don't know what's coming up. The trend for housing is getting smaller and not larger. And we haven't built a 4-bedroom house in God knows how long, and so that's what you're seeing. But I think that with the layout and the footprints that we put in the development, I think, there's not much we can't build here. So I think that would.
Great, so I think we could, we had talked about getting some Williston things together, and those within Chicken County too. Just to have an interest in this, and probably more time doing that too.
Yeah, and I think on our end too, we can talk with some of our partners.
Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your schedule.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
it's nice to see you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you all for this. I am gonna jump out, but thank you, Chris, for even considering this.
Thank you. Chris, so I guess a lot depends on how you build, how you can like stuff like that. So phase 2, like, do you adopt them? I mean, I didn't know yet, obviously.
Well, as Emily will talk. What's that?
Give me a rough feel, I'm not holding you to it.
Greater than 3, what's the well, it's simply, I think it comes down to demand. I mean, I think that given what I've seen in calls that we've had recently, the word starting to get out, although slowly, about the project. We don't have all of our phasing allocation. We're going to continue to come in each year and get a little bit.
You have all the affordable, right? You just need like.
It's close. So Emily and I will sit down and we're going to hash out and see where we're at with what we've got, and then you tell me what I need further. So we're still, we still probably have 3-4 years of going through that process.
At minimum, because the more people that complete, the fewer
Yeah.
probably get. Unless in those years we, for management goes away. I'm just gonna start saying.
Don't tease me now.
Until we manifest it.
I'll get all my hopes up.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think that
It might be some.
if next year we start, then I'll figure a year and a half to get through that first phase. Once we get through the first phase, the development is going to do something like this. We're coming in right here and we're gonna stop right here.
Okay.
All right, so once we get garnered through this, from here, they're gonna be connecting in because we have to meet the standard for the 40 units on for two ingress and egress for both ends.
Okay.
And then this will start. So this is
Okay.
probably gonna be the last road coming in. Well, this will be going in because we got all of our stuff there.
And these are one bedroom?
So these are all carriage homes. These are carriage. These are duplexes. That's a duplex. That's a triplex. That's the sixplex.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and then we have a number of sixplexes. Yeah, we have this 1-bedroom units in 4-unit format.
Okay.
And then we have
Yeah,
the 6-unit
that
format.
one is- okay.
And then we have the fourplexes. So either these won't be 1-bedroom, but these could be, these will all be 1-bedroom.
Right.
Various sizes, so.
And refresh my memory, Howard, any consultants? Like,
How am I gonna sell them?
like, is it?
Is that a trick
You're-
question?
No, I mean, I know they're gonna sell, but
Yeah.
is it through realtor and post, or is it people call and they're using no? How does that?
I just am taking people's names right now
Yeah,
and basically just taking the names and
Yeah.
telephone numbers and when we get close, I'm gonna call everybody back and say, hey,
So not
and we have our own agency.
Yeah.
But the affordable, I think, are going to be something that we're probably not gonna go broke on. Because